Previously on the chosen people. Mankind was blighted by bloodshed and discord. Noah was determined to oppose the culture. Like his great-grandfather Enoch, Noah possessed a heart attuned to God's voice.
These are dark times, my sons. Remaining in the light will require wisdom. Learn to listen to the voice of God.
Behold, I would destroy them with the earth. I would bring a flood to wipe this earth clean.
Noah's heart tightened. He fell to his knees, the weight of God's words pressing down on him.
What am I to do with this knowledge?
I have appointed you, Noah, to build an ark.
The whole thing seemed inconceivable and far-fetched.
We're building a ship in the middle of the valley. Shem, that's what's wrong. Everyone from here to the desert has visited to mock us, and I don't blame them. This is insane! How are these plains going to flood? Where will the water even come from?
Charcoal clouds galloped across the sky. With them came a chilly wind that bit at their cheeks. They hadn't heard the clapping of thunder before. The sound made their muscles tense, as if they were witnessing the birth of a new predator.
And so, it begins.
The Chosen People is sponsored by NetWell. Healthcare costs are rising, and it can feel overwhelming. But at NetWell, we believe there's a better way. Imagine being the part of a community, a family where people just like you share medical expenses. With NetWell, you get affordable care without the burden of surprise bills or sky-high premiums. We're more than traditional healthcare sharing. We offer access to trusted providers, telemedicine, dental, and mental health services. Your well-being is our priority, and we're here for you like family. Join the NetWell family today at netwell.com. Affordable care, trusted community, your health, your way.
Amidst the relentless downpour, the promise of a new dawn emerged from the depths of judgment. Shalom, my friends, from here in the Holy Land. I'm Yael Eckstein with the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews, and this is The Chosen People. In each episode, we explore the rich tapestry of the Hebrew Bible to uncover lessons that still resonate today. We will traverse tales of faith, failure, love, and loss. If you've been enjoying this podcast, be sure to follow and share with your friends. These small steps help us get discovered by more people, spreading hope and inspiration everywhere. And if you're interested in hearing more about the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews and our life-saving prophetic work, you can visit our website at ifcj.org. Let's hop in and begin. Have you ever wondered about the fragility of life, the delicate dance between creation and chaos, that balance between being and not being? This balance certainly must have entered the minds of Noah and his family as the floodwaters began to rise, and a world of human frailty faced chaos, darkness, and death. For 40 days and 40 nights, the earth was submerged, the waters rising higher and higher, engulfing mountains, sweeping away cities, and cleansing the world. In the midst of this, a single vessel of hope, an ark, or as we say in Hebrew, a teva, bore the promise of new beginnings. A family, chosen and faithful, rode the waves of God's judgment, cradled in the mercy of his perfect plan. But the story of Noah and his faithful family's survival isn't just an ancient tale. It reflects the state of many of our hearts today. The sins that flood our modern world and our mighty but merciful God, who is always ready, still today, to rescue, to renew, and to redeem. Today, as we dive into the story of Genesis 7, let's open our hearts to the sobering reality of sin's consequences and the awe-inspiring depth of God's grace.
Parents, are you looking for a screen-free, engaging way to teach your kids the Bible? One that's easy to understand and enjoyable for multiple ages? Kids Bible Stories Podcast is here to help. I created this for my own children, and it's now a favorite among thousands of families. Kids love the vivid imagery, scriptures, and sound effects, while parents appreciate the Apply section for meaningful conversations. We have hundreds and hundreds of beautiful episodes that bring the Bible to life when you simply press play. It's a sound and practical resource that walks alongside you as you teach your kids. We want kids to see how incredible God's Word is in an engaging and memorable way with Kids Bible Stories Podcast. Listen to Kids Bible Stories Podcast on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Jess Cosavetto, executive producer of the hit Netflix documentary series, Dancing for the Devil, the 7M TikTok cult.
And I'm Clea Gray, former member of 7M Films and Shekinah Church.
And we're the host of the new podcast, Forgive Me for I Have Followed. Together, we'll be diving even deeper into the unbelievable stories behind 7M Films and LA-based Shekinah Church, an alleged cult that has impacted members for over 2 decades.
Jessica and I will delve into the hidden truths between high-control groups and interview dancers, church members, and others whose lives and careers have been impacted, just like mine.
Through powerful, in-depth interviews with former members and new, chilling first-hand accounts, the series will illuminate untold and extremely necessary perspectives. Forgive Me for I Have Followed will be more than an exploration. It's a vital revelation aimed at ensuring these types of abuses never happen again.
Listen to Forgive Me for I Have Followed on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
The man's gone mad. Look at it. A boat in the middle of a valley.
His mind's made of clay. The lunatic thinks he's gonna sail away to the sea from the valley.
A glob of mud and ox dung flew through the air and hit Noah square in the face. It stuck to his beard, contrasting with the white streaks that had formed since the beginning of the ark's construction. The mud smeared across his face, mingling with the sweat and grime of relentless toil. He ignored their mockery and kept his head low. He buffed out a piece of lumber before hoisting it onto his shoulder. Noah's arms were thick and tight like a rope. Months of crafting the ark added more gray to his beard and muscle to his body. Behind him, his sons toiled in silence, their hands calloused and their spirits weary under the weight of the villagers' ridicule. The valley echoed with hammers striking nails and saws biting into wood, a symphony of determination and despair.
I'm not sure I can endure the ridicule much longer. And it's only a matter of time before they hurl more than dung. These people hate us already, and now we've given them more reasons to be estranged from us.
Ignore them, Jabeth. Your father isn't worked up, then neither am I.
What do you care what they think? If father's right, they'll all be underwater soon. Next time they insult me, I'll ask them how good they are at swimming.
Noah hurled the beam from his shoulders, slamming it onto the ground with a jarring thud. His eyes, like storm clouds, turned towards his sons. Fury and sorrow intertwined in his gaze.
You think you're funny, Ham? What about you, Japheth? Do you find the idea of millions drowning under the weight of the sky amusing?
The boys fell silent, their faces paling. Their father's nostrils flared, and the creases of his brow deepened with anger.
You laugh now, but I assure you one thing. When you hear the screams of people as they thrash against mountains, you won't be laughing. You'll never laugh again.
Noah stormed off into a grove of fern and pine, his chest heaving with the weight of unspoken fears. He glanced at his hands, which trembled with anxiety.
How will I endure this?
In 7 days' time the waters will come. For 40 days the heavens and the earth shall weep. Their tears will drown all life from the ground.
I don't know if I'll be able to bear it. Who am I to carry this responsibility?
You are righteous, Noah. You are set apart in this generation. I have appointed you. Now go into the ark, Noah. Go with the pairs of animals that I send you.
As you wish.
Noah dragged his feet through the soft earth, grazing a damp fern with his hands and rubbing the dew on his neck. He sighed, stepping into a patch of sunlight piercing the storm clouds. Noah gazed at the ark, a towering monolith against the sky, its shadow stretching over the valley. He watched his sons, no longer boys but men, bound by duty and the promise of future generations, saw, chop, hammer and sand the vessel's final touches. They still hadn't grasped what Noah felt deep in his bones. This calling was a curse as much as a blessing. Noah steadied his trembling hands and drew a deep breath. Before he could take another step, a massive hand gripped his shoulder. It was the Tanner, his face contorted with rage and confusion. He shoved Noah against the trunk of a dying tree.
What's your play, son of Seth? What's the point of having a boat in the middle of the valley?
It's for the coming flood. Soon the skies will burst forth with water, and the earth will open up.
Huh, I have swine with sharper minds than you. You expect me to believe the sky's gonna open up like a river? You're a madman!
The Tanner drew out a blade and pressed it against Noah's throat.
You got a lot of resources to make a boat this big. Hey, maybe they'd be better off with someone who still has his wits about him.
All I have has been given by the Creator. You'd rob from him.
I do what I want, to whom I want, son of Seth. You live by rules nobody else does. That's your weakness. It's why you spend your days with sawdust in your throat instead of a good mead.
The Tanner pressed the edge of the blade further into Noah's skin. A crimson streak dripped down his neck and onto his collarbone. Just then, the ground began to shake. The Tanner stepped back and turned. In an instant, the man was trampled by a large beast bursting from the forest. Its legs were larger than tree trunks, with ivory tusks curling upward. Noah ran beside the beast and out of the tree covering. His eyes widened to behold thousands of animals galloping, crawling, flying, and skulking toward the ark. Noah pressed his hands on his head in disbelief. He shouted to his sons,
Shem! Japheth! Open the ark's door! Ham! Get our wives and tell them to gather the sheaves of hay!
Noah sprinted alongside two gazelles, leaping over lumber and sliding to the ropes beside the ark. He pulled with Shem and Japheth, heaving to open the large door for the incoming animals. Thousands of creatures, two by two, ran into the ark, their hooves, paws, and claws thumping and scratching against the ark's floor.
How do they know where to go?
You know the answer to that, Shem.
They're following the Creator's command, just like us.
A flash of lightning split the skies, followed by a crack of thunder. Noah's gaze turned intense as he watched the clouds churn like deep, chaotic waters. He looked back at the forest where the Tanner lay. This was just the beginning. Soon, everyone outside the ark would perish. The earth was still. The birds had flown away, and the beasts had fled to their burrows. They knew what the city did not. A storm was coming to claim them. Noah and Imzara stood atop a cliff, the wind tugging at their garments like the persistent whispers of the doomed. To their left, the ark stood, complete and filled with creatures of all kinds, a lifeboat amidst an ocean of inevitability. Lights flickered from within, torches lit by their children as they tended to the animals. To the right, the city was aglow with bonfires, the faint sounds of laughter and screams echoing through the breeze, a cacophony of ignorance and defiance.
This world is sick. These people are plagued by evil. I know what they deserve, but I can't bring myself to fully accept it. They're all going to die.
I find some solace in knowing our children will at least be safe.
But what about the other children? What of those who haven't done anything wrong?
Noah's voice cracked like thin ice. His heart was breaking, piece by piece. He gazed out at the horizon, where the sun had not been seen in a week, its light fainting, dimly illuminating the storm clouds before sinking past the valley. Emzara squeezed his hand, her voice a soothing balm to his wounded soul.
You've walked with God this far. Continue your stride and don't look back.
Tonight I will walk into that ark. I fear I will not be the man I was when I walk out.
Nothing will be the same. You, me, the world, everything will be new.
Flashes of lightning replaced the sun's light, and thunder roared like a predator ready to kill. The voice of the Creator spoke through the tempest.
To the ark, Noah.
Noah and Emzara scaled down the cliff back to the ark. As they strode, the skies opened and rain descended upon the land. The rain grew heavier with each moment, softening the earth below. The two quickened their pace when the ground began to quake. They were only a few paces from the ark when the ground burst open with geysers of rushing water. Emzara flew backward while Noah was caught in a torrent of water cascading from above and bursting from below.
Noah, help me!
Hold on!
Noah gripped a stone with his arms and pulled himself up. He scanned the rushing water for signs of his wife. His eyes darted back and forth, desperately trying to see through the rain. Finally, he spotted her hanging onto a pine branch. Noah forced his way through the torrent, driving his feet through the rushing water, and picked her up. Japheth stood at the ark's entrance, reaching out. He took his mother and pointed out to the valley.
Father! Ham and Shem are missing!
What? Where could they be?
Ham was returning from the city, and Shem went looking for him when the waters began to fall.
Stay here with the others.
Noah leaped from stone to stone, avoiding the rushing waters beneath. He reached the hill sloping upward into the forest. The rains were relentless, falling like arrows on Noah's back. The earth trembled underfoot. All around, water erupted from below. Noah looked up to the mountains, where falls tumbled violently, swelling rivers with mighty force.
Ham! Shem! Where are those foolish boys?
Father!
Noah saw Ham and Shem running with their hands tied behind their backs. A mob of men pursued them from behind. Shem leaped over a stone, but Ham's feet were immediately caught on a root. Ham looked back at his pursuers and braced for their attacks, but before they could lay a hand on him, another geyser burst before them, sending each of them tumbling down the hills. Noah helped his boys to their feet and unbound them. The three dodged rolling stones and falling trees, eventually reaching the ark's entrance. Men from the city marched through the rapids with spears in hand, prepared to strike them down and commandeer the ship. But before they could, Noah heard the creaking of wood. A mighty wind blew, raising the ark's door and slamming it shut.
No!
Noah ran to the door and pounded his fists against it. His shouts were surprising to the others.
What's wrong? We made it!
Exactly, Ham. We made it. Everyone else is either dead or dying as we speak.
They didn't care about us. Seconds ago, they were trying to skewer us and steal the Ark. Why are you so upset?
Where's your soul? Listen closely. Everyone, listen.
Underneath the white noise of falling rain and rushing water, the screams became audible. Desperate, blood-curdling screams.
If you don't weep at their suffering, you'd know better than them.
Silence fell among them. The sound of animals braying and purring mingled with the rain and wind. Emzara threw a blanket over Noah's shoulders and led him away. He kept his gaze fixed on Ham, who scowled back, then turned to his brothers, who wore concerned expressions. Outside, the skies wept and the earth quivered. God's wrath poured forth, but it did not please him. He sent the flood with regret and sorrow. The waters prevailed over the earth, and the seas swallowed every creature given the breath of life. It rained for 40 days. Streams turned to rapids, which turned to seas. They rose above the mountains, lifting the ark with them. The ark floated over the massacre. In a sea of judgment, Noah was spared. When the 40 days of rain had ceased, and the sun's rays gently peeked through the dissipating clouds, Noah opened one of the windows. He looked out, seeing a vast expanse of nothingness. Choppy, dark, and unruly waters stretched as far as the eye could see. Floating on the surface were remnants of desolation. Everyone had perished.
Parents, are you looking for a screen-free, engaging way to teach your kids the Bible? One that's easy to understand and enjoyable for multiple ages? Kids Bible Stories Podcast is here to help. I created this for my own children, and it's now a favorite among thousands of families. Kids love the vivid imagery, scriptures, and sound effects, while parents appreciate the apply section for meaningful conversations. We have hundreds and hundreds of beautiful episodes that bring the Bible to life when you simply press play. It's a sound and practical resource that walks alongside you as you teach your kids. We want kids to see how incredible God's Word is in an engaging and memorable way with Kids Bible Stories Podcast. Listen to Kids Bible Stories Podcast on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Jess Cosavetto, executive producer of the hit Netflix documentary series Dancing for the Devil, the 7M TikTok cult.
And I'm Clea Gray, former member of 7M Films and Shekinah Church.
And we're the host of the new podcast, Forgive Me for I Have Followed. Together, we'll be diving even deeper into the unbelievable stories behind 7M Films and LA-based Shekinah Church, an alleged cult that has impacted members for over 2 decades.
Jessica and I will delve into the hidden truths between high control groups and interview dancers, church members, and others whose lives and careers have been impacted, just like mine.
Through powerful, in-depth interviews with former members and new chilling firsthand accounts, the series will illuminate untold and extremely necessary perspectives. Forgive Me for I Have Followed will be more than an exploration. It's a vital revelation aimed at ensuring these types of abuses never happen again.
Listen to Forgive Me for I Have Followed on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Wow, what a harrowing story. A deluge of death, a sea of sorrow, a world drowning in its own wickedness. The waters rose, the skies wept, and creation groaned as the depths swallowed all of life. This is so tragic to read about, hear about, and think about. But in the midst of God's judgment, we all see that there is mercy. A remnant is preserved, a family in a wooden vessel, a floating sanctuary. The storm rages, but within the ark, within the teva, there is hope. This is not the end, but rather a new beginning, a chance to start over. Out of the depths, life will rise again. The waters will recede. The sun will break through the clouds, and the earth will be reborn. Genesis 7 is a story of judgment, yes, but also of grace. Of destruction, yes, but also of deliverance. Noah and his family were preserved and chosen as a remnant to start anew. This is a reoccurring theme, if you realize, throughout the Hebrew Bible. God allows judgment, yes, but never without a remnant of people to carry on his story, the story of his chosen people. As the flood began, there's an interesting bit of thinking from Jewish tradition that underscores just how merciful our loving God is. Genesis chapter 7, verse 7 might sound straightforward. Here's how it reads in English. Noah and his sons and his wife and his sons' wives entered the ark to escape the waters of the flood. Yeah, that seems pretty straightforward. But the Bible never has any wasted words, and this is a perfect example. The first says Noah and his family went into the ark, quote, to escape the waters of the flood. Of course, that's why they entered the ark, right? We know that. But Jewish tradition sees that phrase as a deeper analysis of Noah's thinking in that tense moment. On one hand, Noah believed that there would be a flood. He believed it because God told him so. And Noah had spent 120 years building an ark and warning his neighbors of the impending disaster. But on the other hand, Noah couldn't fully convince himself that God would actually destroy the entire world, even though he knew that creation had become completely corrupt. So Noah only entered the ark, no doubt with the heaviest of hearts, after the rain and the flood had actually begun. So Noah entered the ark, he entered the teva, when the rain started. But then came the flood. And let's dive into scriptures a little bit deeper here once again. Consider the word teva, which is used in the story of Noah and the flood. As we've been talking about, teva means ark or basket in Hebrew. This word appears only twice in the entire Hebrew Bible. Can you guess where? You probably got it. Once in the flood narrative, where the word teva means ark, and once in the story of Moses, where it's translated as a basket. Do you remember the story? Under the threat of death, Moses' mother places him in a teva, in a basket, and sets him adrift on the Nile. There is so much similarity between these two stories of Noah and Moses. It's two stories of salvation. It's two vessels of deliverance. Noah's ark, or teva, is a floating sanctuary amidst the harsh waters, preserving life for a new beginning. And Moses' basket, Moses' teva, is a small, fragile vessel carrying the future deliverer of Israel through the waters of death to life. The great 18th century Hasidic rabbi named Rabbi Nachman of Breslov had a saying that in our modern times has been turned into a beautiful, haunting Hebrew hymn. His saying is this: Kol ha'olam kulo gesher tsar me'od, v'ha'ikar lo lefached klal. That's how you say it in Hebrew. In English, it translates to, the whole world is a very narrow bridge, but the essence of life is not to be afraid. Let me say that again. The whole world is a very narrow bridge, but the essence of life is not to be afraid. I share this because it applies to both the teva of Noah and the teva of Moses. Each one of these was a very narrow bridge, and both of these biblical heroes were not afraid. One false move by Noah, and this most righteous of men from his generation, would have fallen into the flood's raging waters. One small step mishap on the Nile, and the future lawgiver and redeemer of the entire nation of Israel would have drowned in the river's angry torrents. So we see how these two saviors, Noah and Moses in the Bible, they were walking a narrow bridge, and this was the whole future of our faith, Jews and Christians, that was at stake. And so we have to ask ourselves, they weren't afraid. How can we not be afraid? In a world that gives us so many reasons to be fearful, how can we not be afraid, like Noah and Moses, when we're constantly and precariously walking a very narrow bridge? Well, this story, the story of the flood, gives us an answer. And here's what summarizes it for us all. God has a plan. We may not always understand it, and we may not even know what it is, but we only have reason to fear if we think that the world is just chaos and not God in control. We saw with Noah, God had his plan for his family. He had a covenant with humanity that we'll talk about in the next episode, which came through Noah. God certainly had a plan for Moses, the greatest of his prophets, to transmit his Torah, this Bible that we're studying right now, to his people for thousands of years and to lead them to the promised land. Well, if we believe and know that God had a plan for Noah and for Moses, then we must believe and be certain that God has a plan for each and every one of us right now, today, despite it all, his chosen people. We are chosen to have faith in God and to know that he is active in our lives, in our world, and that he has the perfect plan for us, even if we don't see it. As the great rabbi said, the essence of life is not to be afraid. We are called to not be afraid, just as Noah wasn't afraid in his ark, in his tevah. That Hebrew word again, tevah. It's a word pregnant with so much meaning. It's a symbol of God's saving grace. It's a symbol and a reminder that God has his plans for us in our lives, just like Noah and Moses. Because we see in both stories of Noah and Moses, the tevah is God's instrument of preservation, and God is sending us a tevah today as well, despite the very choppy waters. In both stories, the waters represent chaos and danger, but the tevah floats above the waters as a promise of life in the midst of death. From Noah to Moses, to us today, we see a God who delivers. From the flood waters of Genesis to the waters of the Red Sea to the stormy waters of our modern world, we see God's hand at work, preserving, protecting, and saving his people. To expand upon this idea of our God as merciful and protective despite our human imperfections and our broken world, I welcome my good friend, Bishop Paul Lanier.
Oh, yes, ma'am. His mercies are new every day. I thank God that when I search the scriptures, even in this story, I find there is a Goshen in the ocean, the keeping power of God who sustains us and never leaves us, never forsakes us, but sticks closer than a brother. And when I look in the Bible, I find this keeping power in a number. I'm not kidding you. The number 40. Now, you know in this story, the Bible says that Noah was in the boat and it rained 40 days and 40 nights. And that sounds like judgment, understandably, but we keep looking at that number and we find Moses. Moses was a shepherd. And again, it was during a time of judgment, but he was a shepherd under his father-in-law, Jethro. Came another moment when he trekked up Mount Sinai and the earth shook and the heavens were brilliant with the Shekinah of God's glory, and it was then and there that God filled him with the revelation of Torah. But when the children of Israel rebelled against God, we find that they were forced to wander. Not wonder. They knew exactly where they were and why they were there. They were not able to enter the promised land, but spent the next 40 years wandering. You look in the Christian scriptures, the Bible says that Jesus fasted for 40 days and 40 nights before his ministry. So what we're discovering is not only is the number 40 sometimes seen in the context of judgment, but more likely it's related to your generational transfer. We talked about that, didn't we? The plan of God for your life is so much greater than your life. It requires another generation to fulfill it. And I warn you, there's nothing more spiritually violent than the generational transfer of identity and blessings. God has a plan for your life, something he wants accomplished through you. And how important is a Rebecca in the promise of Abraham and Sarah? How important are the daughters-in-law of Noah and his wife? You know, I say to this congregation of a church I serve, I thank God we are interracial. I'm excited that it is interdenominational. It thrills me that it's international. But none of that matters if it's not intergenerational. If we don't have Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, Sarah and Rebekah and Leah and Rachel, we're that close to losing it all. Can I pray during this season of your generational transfer that God will touch, not simply touch you, but touch through you? Amen.
In times of uncertainty, hold on to God's promises. When the world seems to spin out of control and the storms of life rage around you, remember Noah. Picture him standing firm amidst the raging sea, surrounded by chaos, yet anchored in faith. Just as Noah trusted God amid the storm, we too can find peace in his faithfulness. In Isaiah 41:10, we read, "So do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous hand. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand." Like Noah, we are called to trust in God even when the waves are high and the night is dark. Remember, my friends, his faithfulness to those who have faith in him. He has brought you through before, and he will bring you through again. As always, I leave you with this blessing, words of hope and faith from the book of Numbers. Yivarechecha Hashem v'yishmerecha, Yaer Hashem panav elecha v'yechunecha, Yisa Hashem panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face shine upon you. May the Lord be gracious to you. And may the Lord turn his face towards you and give you shalom, give you peace. With blessings from the Holy Land, this is Yael Eckstein, and you are listening to The Chosen People.
This pray.com production is only made possible by our dedicated team of creative talents. Steve Katina, Max Bard, Zach Schellebarger, and Ben Gammon are the executive producers of The Chosen People with Yael Eckstein. Edited by Alberto Avila. Narrated by Paul Coltofianu. Characters are voiced by Jonathan Cotton, Aaron Salvato, Sarah Seltz, Mike Reagan, Stephen Ringwald, Sylvia Zaradoc, and the opening prayer is voiced by John Moore. Music by Andrew Morgan Smith. Written by Bree Roseley and Aaron Salvato. Special thanks to Bishop Paul Lanier, Robin Van Etten, Caleb Burrows, Jocelyn Fuller, and the team at International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. You can hear more Pray.com productions on the Pray.com app, available on the Apple App Store and Google Play Store. If you enjoyed The Chosen People with Yael Eckstein, please rate and leave a review.
Parents, looking for a screen-free, fun, and engaging way to teach your kids the Bible? As a mom, I was looking for the same thing, so I created Kids Bible Stories Podcast. Thousands of families are raving about it, and kids actually request to listen. With captivating sound effects, voices, and an apply section at the end to spark meaningful conversations, it's a hit with both kids and parents. Listen to Kids Bible Stories Podcast on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Jess Cosavetto, executive producer of the hit Netflix documentary series Dancing for the Devil, the 7M TikTok Cult.
And I'm Clea Gray, former member of 7M Films and Shekinah Church.
And we're the host of the new podcast, Forgive Me For I Have Followed. Together, we'll be diving even deeper into the unbelievable stories behind 7M Films and Shekinah Church.
Listen to Forgive Me For I Have Followed on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.